Alright, so here I am. Here we are. It's been about a year since my Spider-Man No Way Home review that I did on the YouTube channel. I do movie reviews outside of YouTube where I take about a minute to 2 minutes to give my thoughts, and it's just posted on like Snapchat and Instagram and stuff like that. I do kind of want to try and take this a bit more seriously, do more of these because they are fun, even though they are a bit of a pain and they take a lot more time, obviously, to get posted. But I think for this film, for a film as important and as huge as Avatar, The Way of Water, it felt necessary to do another YouTube review for this film. And this video, this YouTube video, is going to be broken down into two main parts because I want to talk about my first experience with Avatar, the original film, and then I want to talk about The Way of Water and my thoughts on that. So yeah, I will have timestamps either here and or in the description, letting you know where the Way of Water stuff is if you want to skip to that. But first, let's talk about the original Avatar. And this is all off the cuff, by the way. So it's going to be edited probably weirdly and stuff like that, but very impromptu. But I just have a lot of thoughts that I want to get out. So the first Avatar, well, here's the thing. The first Avatar came out in 2009, and I was 7 in 2009. I turned 7 in 2009. Um, so I don't really have any recollection of the original Avatar, at least I didn't for a while until I saw it in theaters in September when they did the re-release. You know, so much of the conversation around Avatar has been about its lack of cultural relevancy, how overhyped and overrated it is, and a lot of people are, I think, understandably angry at it being the highest grossing film of all time. So I came into the theater when I saw the first Avatar with some really bad expectations. Also, keep in mind, I also don't remember any of James Cameron's films. I vaguely remember watching Titanic as a child, but again, I was a child. I was young. I don't remember anything about that film, whether I like it or not. And I haven't seen the Terminator movies or Aliens or anything like that. So James Cameron, completely new director to me. So I didn't have high hopes for Avatar at all, especially as well with the simplistic storytelling accusations, which did become true, but I'll expand more on that in a bit. Here's the thing. I saw Avatar and I walked out of the theater thinking this might as well be a masterpiece. I love the original Avatar. I adore that movie so much and for so many reasons. Um, the 3D thing, 3D itself as a fad, as a thing, has kind of faded out from relevancy, and people might blame Avatar for starting this trend that kind of really went nowhere interesting. You could say like the 3DS was cool, but again, this is another thing where people turn that off and they don't really care about the 3D, which is fine. I understand 3D has kind of faded away from most other things, but I think James Cameron does 3D in a way that other people don't, or James Cameron has a very clear appreciation for the technology that comes across in Avatar that I don't think comes across in most other 3D films. It is a very one-off thing for a lot of studios, and they still do it today, I think. But again, they don't appreciate that technology very much, and a lot of them have jumped ship because of that. James Cameron hasn't with this film, and he really pioneered or got that technology big, I guess, because of Avatar, from my understanding, anyways. And that comes across because the 3D is very good in Avatar, and you do get the sense that it wouldn't be the same without it. It definitely wouldn't be the sense if you're watching it on your phone, but um, so yeah, and let's talk about the story, right? Because so many critiques of the original Avatar about the story. Personally, while the story is simple, admittedly very simple and very easy to understand, I honestly think that works to its benefit in a lot of ways almost. And to me, the visuals of Avatar being as appealing as they are, and by the way, Avatar is some of the best CGI, best looking movie like I've seen in a while, or I had seen in a while, especially compared to what we've been getting from MCU projects that are clearly very rushed out since they have so many other films down the pipeline. James Cameron only really had this one, and he's got other stuff later on, but You know, it was just so good. Such a beautiful looking film, but again, with story, I think the visuals of Avatar are a part of its world building. I almost want to say like style is substance right here. I want to say that because I really feel convinced about that quote with Avatar, because I think the visuals are so good and there's so many cool creatures and cool elements of the world that you remember, or that I remember at least, that establish that world and make that an interesting place all on its own. And I think that the characters serve the story great, and I think the story is a very tried and true one, but it's one that most blockbuster audiences are going to latch onto fine and they're going to have fun with. And James Cameron is going to run with it in the most craziest way that even if you've seen this story time and time again, it's going to feel different, right? And that's the thing with James Cameron. I feel like he's really tapping into his feeling with his movies, as far as I've seen. And that's what Avatar's story does for me. And I find it to be a very good, very solid story that I get attached to, genuinely. You know, people talk about not remembering anything or there being no cultural impact. Well, the movie came out 13 it came out 13 years ago. I don't know what to tell you. You know, you probably do remember other films that came out 13 years ago, sure, but when you're comparing Avatar to like other blockbusters, and the MCU being maybe more memorable than Avatar and stuff like that, it's like, of course they are. Those films um, come out constantly. Constantly, and they're based on source material that you already know a lot about, a lot of people know a lot about, and they love already. So it's a challenge to create a new IP and to get people in love with it like that. And while James Cameron didn't succeed on getting everyone on board, or at least hasn't up till now, I still think it worked for me, and everything else about it really, really worked, and I love that movie so much. So, skip here. Let's talk about Avatar: The Way of Water. If you didn't watch the last segment that I just did, my thoughts on the original Avatar are I think it's really great, really amazing. Um, I walked out of the theater when I first saw it thinking that it was probably a masterpiece, and I don't really have any other reason, thinking back on it now, to change that. I really, really like the original Avatar. So, how did I feel about The Way of Water? Well, you can probably guess. Okay, us talk about The Way of Water, really, and let me address maybe some of the criticisms of the movie as well. I don't feel like I have to defend the movie, but I do want to explain why Avatar and the franchise and the world building works so well for me as opposed to I think other people and their expectations coming into movies like these. Because let's talk about the story with Avatar: The Way of Water. Okay, let's talk about that first. Why not? It is still very simple. It's still very easily digestible, still very basic. It reminds you of other things. Sure, it'll probably do that for a lot of people. It did for me at certain points. But again, I really don't think that's the point. That's not what James Cameron is trying to do with these movies, and I don't think he necessarily has to. I think Avatar and The Way of Water, I think their simple plots work really well. And by the way, The Way of Water is a more complex film than the first Avatar. It is definitely more layered. There's more stuff going on that I think is honestly a lot more interesting, not only to me, but would probably be a lot more interesting to people in general. Even though I don't think it's going to win you over if you didn't like the first Avatar. Obviously, it completely got me. I will say I was absolutely bawling during most of this film. Not most of this film, that's an over exaggeration, but let me expand on that. So, just a personal anecdote here. I guess I'll have this segmented out. Um, so, what happened was, it's so beautiful already. The 3D glasses on, and these are bigger 3D glasses because I saw it in IMAX, which was the best way to see it. Probably the only way to really see it. Maybe Dolby Cinema was really good too. I don't really know, but it was phenomenal. But then you have a lot of the flying scenes. The flying scene, the first time in The Way of Water, that they just go and you see all this beautiful landscape. That got me teary eyed. That got me crying. I because it was so beautiful. And you don't see things like that in a lot of films nowadays, not even in films that should be visual spectacles, like MCU films, like DC films, like basically any other action film isn't a spectacle the way that this movie is. So I cried at that, but I also cried. There's a section in this movie, and this is a smaller section that was in the trailer where there's a boy with a large animal, maybe you could say is akin to a whale. James Cameron, the environmentalist, really comes out in that scene. You can tell, you can feel through the film that he cares so much about these oceans, about the world, about Earth. Even though we're not on Earth, you can just feel it through the camera. And I was so overwhelmed, especially there's something you notice that it's like, oh yeah, you can make an easy connection there. Like, yeah, we do that to animals. That's how we harm animals in the ocean. And just the way that the scene goes about, it feels like so much is being healed. It feels like, I don't even know how to describe it. It's so big and wonderful and so clearly telling you something, not really through words at all. I think it's silent for a lot of the time, or if it's not silent, they're not telling you directly. It's very, you feel that scene in a way that I don't think I've ever felt in a scene before. It got me crying in the theater. And by the way, I'm so lucky. There weren't many people next to me, like directly next to me. The theater was very packed, and I'm very happy it was pretty packed, but thankfully nobody sat near me, because especially near the end, I mean, oh, the end had me bawling. I was bawling like a baby. Just, yeah, even, okay, here's what's crazy, right? I walked out to my car and I started crying, which rarely happens when I see any movie. And I cry at a lot of movies, but this was different because because it caught me in the car, which is never, I don't think has ever happened before, or has rarely ever happened before. So I was extremely emotional towards the end of this film. And you've probably heard a lot about Act 3, this final act, whatever, and how good it is, and it is just phenomenal in so many ways. So many interesting plot points intersect here, and that's where the story is the strongest, I feel. All right, let's talk about visuals. Man, this movie, I feel like a broken record, but this movie is beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. It's probably the most beautiful thing I've ever seen, just visually speaking. No other film looks like The Way of Water. No other movie captures what The Way of Water captures, and I'm so grateful to have even seen it on an IMAX screen. Because it was so worth the price of admission. But I know those tickets are expensive for some people. But oh, wow, just incredible. I don't know where to start. I mean, the water scenes are obviously beautiful, but also Pandora. The forest areas look as great as ever. There's just so much going on here, and if you compare this to anything else you've ever seen, this is gonna win as far as visuals go. I don't really know if there's anything more to say on that front, because wow. And then let's talk about music. The guy that did the original Avatar score, I believe his name is James Horner, something along those lines. I'm sorry if I got his name wrong, but I believe he died, and someone took over. And you know what? The music is great. I have no complaints about the music. I think the music was wonderful. It was there when it needed to be. A lot of things here were there when they needed to be, and what I mean by that is, like, okay, let's talk about like comedy, for example. There are some comedic moments in here, and they feel really tight. They feel really appropriately timed with the script. For the most part, I think there are some areas where people who are watching will kind of be like, that didn't really fit, or that was a little off. Didn't really bother me any, but I could tell there were some areas that would probably bother a few people as far as comedic timing goes. But nothing like MCU bad, because if you've seen Thor: Love and Thunder, you know how bad that can get. But not here. No, absolutely not here. I love the little comedic moments. Just a few laughs you get from the audience, and just so many things are perfectly timed here like that. I also think, let's talk about the cast a little bit. So this was something that had me worried a little bit at the beginning, and I really wasn't sure how it would work out. But and this is not really a spoiler. This is pretty clear in the cast list. It's basically just that Sigourney Weaver and the guy, I don't know the actor's name, but the guy that plays the big bad, he does, they come back in a way. in a way, which I don't really want to get into the specifics, but I think the ways that they come back, okay, I was looking at it like this is a really weird direction to go in. This is a weird plot element, and I'm not sure how it's going to pay off. But I think it paid off in a beautiful, absolutely wonderful way. And I don't think I would have it any other way. I think James Cameron did something really cool where he took an element of storytelling where I would usually think this is cheating, you can't do this feels wrong, you shouldn't do this is cheating your viewer, this is cheating everything. But then he turns it around in a way where I feel like I can't have the movie without it, and I'm so happy that it's here. So if you've seen the film, you'll know what I'm talking about, and maybe it doesn't work for you. It probably won't work for everyone. A lot of things in Avatar don't work well for everyone, but that element, I think, figured itself out in one of the best ways it could have. And I'm really thankful that James Cameron somehow was able to do that with the plot in such an interesting way that especially pays off in the final moments of the film. I think the action is great. Obviously, the third act, but in so many other places of the film, the action is just spectacular. It looks fantastic. It feels fantastic. Actually, you know what? Let's jump into one other thing that I want to address, and that is the gimmicks, right? James Cameron's gimmicks, if you will. How should I talk about this? So, I saw this in IMAX, right? And one of the things that was promised in regards to the movie was a high frame rate. I think it's 48 frames per second. I'm going off that information right now. 48 frames per second, I think, is what it was filmed in, or what it's supposed to be. There were only a few times where I looked at the picture and I thought, is this high frame rate? Only a few, like one or two times I thought that. I don't even know if my theater was high frame rate or not. I honestly couldn't tell you because I didn't really notice it. And that's weird. That's another thing. That's weird because I view entertainment at 30 FPS. I view movies at 24 FPS, duh. And I view video games at 60, and I view video games at 120 and 144, and I can easily tell the difference on those smaller screens. I can easily tell when something is different frame rate wise, and some people had complaints about this film, like sort of going between 24 and 48 in some scenes, but I didn't really notice it. I wish I could comment on this more, but I genuinely just did not notice it really at all, except for maybe a few scenes where I was like questioning it. That's like one or two scenes, so I can't comment on it. I can comment, however, on the 3D, and I have my glasses here somewhere. Hang on. Yeah, this right here. This is the AMC and IMAX glasses. I brought them home. I know that's weird. But part of it was wanting to like just show it off for the review, I guess. These are definitely bigger lenses than in the regular like RealD 3D ones because it's IMAX. Didn't expect that going in though. I was kind of weirded out, but the glasses were fine. But the 3D effect, you know, is very good. And again, this is where if you didn't watch my segment earlier in the video talking about the original Avatar, I think James Cameron does 3D the best, and you can tell through his filmmaking that he cares about 3D more than any other filmmaker or than most other filmmakers. And so it being incorporated here as part of the experience, perfectly fine. Very good. I honestly really wouldn't want to watch the movie without it, which is weird, because usually most 3D movies I'd be perfectly fine without it, but for that, yeah, sign me up, man. I will go watch it again with the 3D glasses on. It doesn't bother me personally. I know that bothers other people, and if you have to miss out on the 3D effect because of that, you know, are you missing much? Probably not. I just really like how we did it in this film. But yeah, I think the 3D was cool. It was good. It's the best 3D has been in years. And I don't even think they're really doing anything new, but I have no idea. I could go on to some criticisms. While I feel the movie's really good, I honestly think it's a masterpiece in so many ways. Not just from a visual perspective. I think the story, as simple as it is, I think that works in its favor. I think that the layers here are really good that they add, and they pay off in really cool ways. But if there's any like minor complaints I have, I'm gonna list them here. So there's one thing that happens with one of the children. It's Kiri, where she experiences like an event of sorts, and I thought it was very weird. I was like, "Whoa, what's happening?" I mean, it kind of made sense, but I was like, Wow, I'm kind of crazy right now. um, and that thing, I don't think it really paid off or came back later on in the film. So I found it a little weird. This though, I don't think is really that big of a deal, and the reason why is because I'm like 99% sure that plot point and that character, the stuff that's wrong with her or whatever, I think is something they're setting up for a third film. I would not be surprised at all if that was the case. So that was the only thing that was kind of really weird about it. Other complaints? Not much. You know, there's a lot of exposition in the first 45 minutes or so of the movie. It's honestly, I wouldn't really say it's a lot. It's a decent amount, though. And if you're already familiar with Pandora and how this world works, it might be a little like, okay, let's do a little recap for everyone so everyone can get up to speed. Um, but I don't know. That's just a part that was like I enjoyed that part of the film. Don't get me wrong. It's just something I noticed. Definitely quite a bit of exposition there to I think reacclimate audiences with Avatar and the world. Only talked about films that I personally love. Spider-Man: No Way Home. Let's just wrap it up here. You know, Spider-Man: No Way Home. I still think is great, even though I do admit that film does have pretty objective flaws. Like if we're speaking like outside of me as a fanboy and outside of me being so emotionally invested, there are flaws with that film. There are flaws with this one too. But I tend to rate films on a basis that more so appeals to me emotionally and more so appeals to me as far as how engaged I was with the film. Minor things typically don't affect my rating that much when I love something as much as I loved The Way of Water. So you can kind of guess what my score is here. I honestly thought it was pretty perfect. I want to go back immediately, and I want to jump back into it, even though it's 3 hours long. Which, by the way, didn't feel that runtime one bit. Nope, not a single bit. Didn't feel that runtime. I checked my watch once just because I kind of got the inkling we were coming into the final act, and I heard it was like a 45 minutes to an hour of just nonstop, and it was. So I just checked to see how far we were in. We were like 2 hours or 30 minutes in, and I was like, okay. So it flew by for me. I love this film. I think it's great. If you didn't like the first Avatar, you're probably not gonna like this. But that's your problem. That's not my problem. So I don't know. If you liked this review, if you liked me rambling, kind of being very impromptu with this whole video and this whole review, leave a like, subscribe. Most importantly, follow me on my letterbox. It'll be linked in the description. That's where all my bad takes and bad opinions are. I have some very bad opinions, in fact, on other films that came out this year. So argue with me in the comment section. Do what you want. Avatar is awesome. Avatar: The Way of Water is even better, and James Cameron is pushing this industry forward like no one else is. So, see ya. Until next time.